How do you solve a problem like Omari? Welcome to Blue Monday, an Ipswich Town podcast. Hello, good evening, and welcome to Ipswich Town's premiere podcast, Blue Monday. For the news show, I welcome, as ever, Joe Fairs to our regular Wednesday night slot. How's it going, Joe?
Yeah, good. Just another quiet couple of days as an Ipswich Town fan, isn't there? Without a huge amount to discuss, but I'm sure we'll be able to drag it out for 5 or 10 minutes.
I was thinking actually as I was driving to Bromley yesterday, I thought, well, Christ, if we just go there and get a regular uniform 1-0 win, what on earth are we going to talk about for an hour? However, thanks to Omari Hutchinson's agent and Nathan Broadhead's tummy, I think we might be okay. Hello to everyone in the chat. There are an awful lot of you there. Hello to Veronica. Hello to Jeremy. Hello to Tom Come on, Tom, help me out here. To miss me, maybe. Yeah, understandably, there's going to be a lot of people, I think, in the chat. What Joe and I plan to do is we will go across yesterday's match in a little bit of detail, not an awful lot. But we will then obviously move on to the major talking points of the day and of the previous evening. But yeah, put any chats, any comments you wish, and we'll try and grab them. It's Joe and myself tonight, so we'll grab them as and when we can see them. And yeah, let's get the discussion going in the chat, and we'll get the discussion going on the screen as well for you. So yes, Joe, let's go straight into it. Let's cut to the chase. The match we were both in attendance at yesterday, one in the away end and one in the home. The lineup probably requires a conversation in itself. Let me grab that for you. 8 changes from Friday night. Three debutants: Ashley Young, right back; Cedric Keepray, centre back; and Finn Barbrick, who was impressed in pre-season alongside his fellow youngster, relatively, Cameron Humphreys. Christian Walton has a chance to stake a claim for a league start. Leif Davis in at left back for a bit of continued pre-season work, and Ogbene having to start for the second time in 5 days, having been out for the previous 9 months, is probably not ideal. On the opposite wing, Jack Clark looking to get some form and confidence back after arguably a weakish performance at Birmingham. Chaplin behind Ali Al-Hamidi. 2 keepers on the bench. Joe, your thoughts on that lineup?
Well, I guess the omissions were as big a news as the team selected, and it sounds as though there seems to be these teams that go around on WhatsApp every game now, don't they? Where everyone seems to be past them, and it changed from there. And when you see that it was Nathan Broadhead and Omari Hutchison presumably due to start, both of them out of the side, it's really made it difficult for us. It meant Leif Davis, who looked not quite on it at Birmingham, looked like he's not quite fit, had to start. And the fact he went off after 45 minutes in what was clearly a pre-arranged stuff for Ben Johnson makes you think that they just literally had to do what they needed to do to get through the game. And then you saw Ogbene on the right, again, another one who you sort of want to be managing him back, but we're just so short of options in that right-hand side position that we just had to play him there. So, yeah, disappointing in that regard. I was really pleased to see Finn Barbrick there. I noticed his sort of twin brother and father were in the away end, so I'm sure a proud moment for them and for him. And I'm sure we'll move on to it, but gave a really good account of himself in pre-season and won't have done himself any harm in getting a loan move sorted if indeed he doesn't stay around here.
Yeah, well, as you say about emissions, the 2 headline emissions weren't the only ones. We'll obviously talk about those after spoken at the match. But obviously Jens Kajustad wasn't in the squad. Chuba Akpom wasn't in the squad, and Azor Matosiwa wasn't in the squad. So yeah, we were very much down to the hashtag bare bones. And obviously, it would be nice to get the new signings in and up to speed as soon as possible. But even then, the post-match comments, I think it was post-match rather than pre, from Kieran McKenna seemed to suggest that both Kiyuste and Akpom haven't had a startling pre-season. So, as you were saying about managing players having to start games, we're probably going to still be managing those two for a few weeks yet, you'd have thought, and maybe dipping them in and out rather than throwing them in at the deep end.
Yeah, and we could have had a nice home game against Wickham in 2 or 3 weeks, having just seen the draw for the second round of the Carabao Cup. And I think that's where some of the disappointment stems from as well, which we'll get onto, that you're missing a game that will be probably the last game Christian Walton, Cameron Humphreys, even Cedric Keeper, these guys start until the FA Cup third round, and it would have been good for, I'm sure that game would have been really good for Jens Kiyuste and Chuba Akpom.
Yeah, well, fingers crossed that would have been the next game that they would start. Hopefully nothing happens between now and the new year to change that. Right, Bromley themselves made 7 changes to their last starting 11, including Michael Cheek, who was on the bench. Quite a young team as well, I think, led to believe. So yeah, in terms of the game, Joe, I say we won't go into minutiae, but from our perspective, what in the first half they were kicking towards myself on the terrace. Davis and Clark, I thought, combined well inside and outside, didn't they? And probably grasping at straws, but they had a couple of bits and pieces, didn't they, down our left-hand side. Pull back to Chaplin in particular, which he put over, which 2 years ago he'd have probably stuck right in the corner.
Yeah, I thought both Davis and on the left and Ogbene on the right got in behind into some good positions on the right and left. And yeah, and there was a decent partnership development between Leif Davis and Jack Clark, but I still found Jack Clark pretty disappointed with how he played. He kept just carrying the ball too far and coming inside and just ended up losing. I think he sort of had 2 of 7 successful dribbles last night, and you just can't keep giving the ball away that often in those areas. I don't think there's a huge amount of thrust from the midfield. I think they were both playing relatively safe because there, and we've sort of been having this chat in the sort of Blue Monday, one of the Telegram groups on there, about Connor Chaplin's impact on the game. I found him a very frustrating performance, giving the ball away huge amount of times in the first half. And we've just had the stats through that I think it was 18 of 32 completed passes in the first half. And he was trying to force things, but it was just forcing things so early, it wasn't really allowing us to get a foothold in the game and hold the ball in their half for any period, because he was just trying to force these balls through. But then you say that, but he did. Well, I say that, but he did put a really good ball through to Ali El-Hamadi, who gets in, and he ends up sort of going around the keeper and pulling it back to Jack Clark, where probably there's a chance to get a shot away before the keeper and score a goal there, makes a good run in behind, but then just doesn't have that confidence or to finish it from there. But I thought generally the first half was pretty comfortable, bar a couple of set pieces, one of which Christian Walton sort of goes out to get there, doesn't really get anywhere near it, sort of ends up stuck underneath the ball, and their defender has a free header from 6 yards out, which Keeper does his best to keep out, but it just sort of heads it into the roof of the net, and we sort of go in 1-0 down at the break.
Yeah, just a point here from Norman on Jack Clark. I'm sort of leaning that way as well. I don't know whether he's trying too hard, or is it, and to him and to the point you're making about kind of Chap, Joe, is it sometimes the fact that they're trying to force something, but they're just not on the same wavelength, or there's not an option available for example, for Jack Clark to pass the ball earlier because the team are still, for whatever reason, seemingly playing like relative strangers. There doesn't seem to be any sort of understanding across that 3 behind the striker, and certainly not much of an understanding with the guy who was playing up front by himself. My eyes.
Yeah, I guess when you talk about Connor Chaplin's pass, if he's playing those balls through to George Hurst or Wes Burns instead of Chirag Bene, where they know each other's games sort of inside out, he probably has more success in those, and those balls are the balls that set up the goals and get us away. But I don't know, with Jack Clark, it's very difficult because I found he just didn't look physically up to it in the Premier League. He just looked like he was bullied, and I thought on Friday that was the case there. They just got into him really tight, really quickly, and really early, and bullied him at the game on Friday night, I thought. And whilst, like I said, Martin saying he was bullied by a League Two reserve defence, I don't think he was bullied at the game last night. I don't know, he is lightweight. And the problem is if he doesn't release the ball, he comes inside, he just tries to keep carrying it, and there's nowhere to go. And there was a couple of times in the second half where he loses the ball, and it's the equivalent of when you make a square pass, you lose the ball. It puts the team in trouble because they're just in a position to break when they do that. And there must have been 4 or 5 times where he ends up just dribbling across the edge of the box without sort of anything happening. And whether it's because there's not runs being made or he's not getting up, he's not seeing the runs being made, but it's really, really difficult. And like I say, you've got to give him some sort of allowance because he was all through pre-season, he was playing on the right wing with Jayden Philogene on the left wing, and then we get one injury and all of a sudden Clark, I know that is his preferred position on the left, but he's sort of been working on something else. And it does just seem that whatever happens with Jack Clark at Ipswich, it doesn't seem to work. It seems almost cursed here that he sort of gets in the team, does all right last season, and we get early red cards and he's a player that gets dragged off 2 or 3 games in a row. He hits the post at Fulham, which stops us from winning the game, and sort of our season almost ends on that sliding doors moment. He just, I don't know, he doesn't seem to have been, I wouldn't say he hasn't been given the chances because he has been given the chances, but I also feel that it just doesn't feel like it's going to work from here, does it? I think everyone was hoping drop down to the Championship and he's sort of back at this level and can start flying. And I think we've seen the first 2 games. It doesn't feel like he's going to fly this season, does he? And like I say, hopefully I'm wrong, and he can turn out. And like I say, listen to other podcasts. He's predicted to be the Championship Player of the season. People are expecting that from him, but I just don't feel I've seen enough in an Ipswich shirt to expect that. And we're not going to put him on the left wing and build a team around him. No,
well, you've just got to hope that he will get his mojo back, find his feet again in the Championship, and fly. But if Jayden Philogene's not too far away from a place in the squad, then you would think that he's going to need to do that sooner rather than later. But to Streaky's point, it is only 2 matches.
So with big changes in the teams and moving on there. And like I say, Clark, if we'd have started the season with Clark on the right and Philogene on the left, maybe we'd have sort of, that's what we played with through pre-season. And I know it's only pre-season, but we look like we're really developing some nice patterns in pre-season and working the same way.
Just a point here that Streaky's made, and I was chatting to Joe beforehand and said exactly this, really, that he's saying that for those who are listening, our decision-making is still in early pre-season mode. To my eyes, we just seem to be, as a team, whether it's decision-making, fitness, cohesion, partnerships, whatever you want to call it, we just seem to me to be in like the second week of pre-season rather than the second week of the season. Anyway, 1-0 down at half-time. But we started off well in the second half. We equalised in the 53rd minute. Good cross from Ogbene. Good touch and shot, wasn't it, from Chaplin? Great save by the keeper onto the bar, and followed up and put in by Ben Johnson, who'd come on at half time, as you said earlier, Joe, for what looked like a predisposed substitute for Leif Davis. He was playing on the left. He did okay, didn't he? When he came on the left, maybe arguably did better going forward than he did defensively, Ben Johnson.
Yeah, I thought defensively we struggled at times, really, in that they were quite direct on the counter-attack and sort of strong boys out wide, and they got the better of him a couple of times. But I thought going forward, he made a real big difference, had a good shot that was tipped over, scored the goal, put 2 or 3 really good crosses in, including the one sort of in the very last minute, which to Ali Al-Hamadi. But no, I thought that was a really good performance from him, and I thought him sort of coming inside, people going outside. He's got a decent left foot when he sort of puts a cross on it. Yeah, I thought that was after Friday, where I thought he was probably our poorest player on Friday. It was nice to see him bounce back here, especially in an unfamiliar role. So hopefully he can pick something up this season, pick a position and work with it and become a versatile and useful player to us.
Yeah, I suppose Yeah, exactly that. To your point, being versatility being the word, because again, Streaky, I'm putting your name up here a lot. Maybe it's because you're a top tier customer. He's mentioned that Ashley Young was a class apart last night. I did think that he was. I thought personally he was our best player, and if Ashley Young is going to nail down that right hand side, then if Ben Johnson can play left as well as right, then he may well be an able deputy for both sides of the pitch. You've got to hope, haven't you, Joe?
Yeah, in a similar way that sort of Brandon Williams was due to be that for us, wasn't it, when he was here? Your sort of right back and can cover your left back as well, because that's where he played a lot for Manchester United previously. But yeah, hopefully, because like I said, with Connor Townsend out, we're going to need something at left back, and it's just whether we go out and try and find someone of that profile, that left-footed profile, or if they're going to come inside more and work both ways, then maybe Johnson is the man for that role, or sort of between him and Cameron Humphreys, they can cover that role, because it's difficult when you've only got 25 players allowed in the squad and you look at what we've got already. There's not many spaces unless you're going out and buying under 21s permanently, which is very expensive and very difficult to get the right ones.
Yeah, exactly. Get the right one. For the rest of that half, as you said about breaking, Joe, Bromley had a good break, which was a good save by Walton. Smodic got teed up. Did he try to place one in the far corner? Another good save by their keeper. And then probably the most gilt-edged chance of the entire match was in the 93rd, 94th minute, was it? Ali Al-Hamidi at the back post didn't get much of a contact at all onto the ball when it looked like a decent pass, cushion, whatever you needed, would have got us the win in the last knockings of the match. As it was, he didn't. As it was, the game went to penalties, and this is what we do, to coin a phrase. We went out on penalties, Joe, and the two players that missed our penalties were our first and currently second choice strikers.
Well, George Hurst scored his penalty on Friday, which was more important than the one last night. But obviously, Ali Al-Hamadi had that awful penalty against Bristol Rovers in the Cup back in January, which sort of spelled the end of his time with us for that part of the season. He then went out on loan. We didn't even bother waiting for a replacement at that stage, did we? I don't think George Hurst was quite fit. He might have come on first game back there, and similar to what we did with Freddie Ladapo the season before, we let them go before we had a replacement in. And I think this might have been that moment again for Ali last night, where I don't know what it is, because technically he's not quite at the level we need, but he is quite a chaotic player, does work, puts himself about, gets into good positions, gets on the end of things. I thought he did well when he came on Friday against Birmingham, sort of in an unfamiliar role, got down that line well and worked up. But then again, even then he gets in a good position, slips over. It feels like it's not going to work for him at Ipswich Town, whether that is long term or short term. But I don't see that he's going to make an impact for us this season. And you looked at pre-season and he did well in pre-season, and you think, is there a chance he could be the sort of third choice striker? But I'd sort of been quite keen to get somebody else in to replace him, because I think he needs more than what we can offer him this year. And I don't think he can offer us enough for what we need. And I think last night is probably that sort of final nail in the coffin for him for this season as it is. And I think it's sad. I haven't been on social media, so I don't know if he was getting loads of abuse. No, I really hope not. But in the away end, it felt as though sort of somewhere between a bit of a joke figure and just empathy and sympathy for him. It wasn't there wasn't much anger directed at him, and you could see it really hurt him and means a lot to him. And when he came over to the away fans at the end, he sort of looked distraught on his face. I know you're sort of projecting emotions onto people, and it's just I don't know, it's just not going to work for him. And I think everyone wishes him well and hopes he can go off and find something and can come back at some point and be a player for Ipswich Town if it is only a loan move. But I don't think anyone would have any confidence in him if we needed to rely on him, even as the sort of 65-minute sub for an extended period of time this season. So on that regard, I just don't think he can be in that first, second or third choice strikers for us.
So 20 minutes in, Joe has said it's not going to work for Jack Clark and it's not going to work for Ali Al-Hamidi. We've got 40 minutes left, so you can cross off another half a dozen or so of our current squad. So in terms of last night's match, then Joe, we've obviously you've spoken about Ali Al-Hamidi, perhaps not doing himself many favours with regards to match that first team squads. Is there anybody else that maybe didn't do themselves a favour? Maybe Jack Clark, you mentioned earlier, but conversely, who did do themselves a favour?
Well, we've already mentioned Ashley Young, haven't we? I thought he did, but that's, I guess, to be expected. I think I was on the same row as his parents and boy, who were in the away end last night as well. But I thought Finn Barbrook did himself probably more favours than Cameron Humphreys, if I'm being honest. And the fact that Finn Barbrook is 20 and Cameron Humphreys is 21 makes a big difference, because Barbrook can be the fifth midfielder without being in the squad, where Cameron Humphreys needs to take up a place in the squad. And maybe if one's going to go out on loan and go out and get games, it might be Cameron Humphreys. But I thought Barbrook did himself some favours in that regard. Other than that, I don't think there was I thought Ogbene played better than he had done on Friday and
grew into it, didn't he?
Yeah, and probably the minutes in his legs help him. But yeah, I'd probably say just Young and I'd say Barbrook in the middle, and I guess someone else who maybe didn't do themselves any favours. Even though I thought with his feet he was good, is Christian Walton with the goal. You sort of come out, get lost under a set piece and concede a goal. It's difficult, isn't it?
Yeah. And yet another one of long legacy of losing to lower league opposition. I think Stu Watson in the East Anglia Daily Times says it's the 15th time in 15 seasons if you combine the FA Cup and League Cup. You can add Bromley to, well, everyone will know who they are: the Wimbledons, Coal-U's, Maidstones, Accringtons, Lincoln,
Stevenage, Crawley
on TV, etc. Okay, we've done that. Let's have a quick word from our show sponsors, Atwells, and then we'll be back to talk potential departures.
Blue Monday is brought to you in partnership with Atwell Solicitors, your ideal legal partner for property and business law. Whether you're buying a home, starting a business, or just need legal guidance, our dedicated team has got you covered. Trust our award-winning customer service team to handle your legal matters with care and expertise. Find out more at atwells.com or visit us at our offices in Ipswich, Colchester, London, and our new location in Woodbridge.
Okay, here we go. Sadly for us, we're going to have to concentrate on prospective outgoings, as it is very quiet, uneasily quiet on the incomings front, despite us being pretty desperate for starters and also cover almost all over the pitch, you would think. Post-match, town boss Kieran McKenna was asked, understandably, by BBC Suffolk about Omari Hutchinson, and he commented that Omari had trained on Monday. He had got over his throat infection, and unfortunately for us, he didn't feel he could contribute, quotes, with the situation as it is, quotes. Now, that situation, Joe, am I missing something here? The situation is that we haven't received a bid that matches our evaluation. I get that he wants to move to the Premier League, back to the Premier League, but what are the club to do if they've received no serious, excuse me, again, quoting, no serious or appropriate offers? Are we just letting him sit stuff out? If there are no current buyers, what's he doing? Where's he going to go off to? Is he training? Is he just refusing to play matches? It's a pretty horrific situation we find ourselves in.
Yeah, well, I'm hoping. I've got obviously no inside track on this like anyone, but maybe just in the league that he would play the game. I could see maybe not wanting to go away to Bromley in a cup, to be in a fully changed side, to be there. I'm not saying it's right to do that, but there might be some of the thinking behind it that it's just a League Cup tie. We're not taking it as seriously when you look at the amount of changes we're making, that maybe it needs to be that, and maybe we see something of him on Sunday, and hopefully we do, and hopefully he gets a good reception, and hopefully that leads to him staying or getting a good fee. But I'm I say I'm always reticent to really jump on the players too much on these ones, because you never have the full picture. You have the picture that the club is willing to present to you on it, but I say we think Kieran McKenna is very honest and open, but we also know that Brandon Williams was in rehab when he was here, and we were being told he was back home and he should be back in Ipswich in a week or two, or he had a thigh injury or a calf injury and he was being monitored. He was going to be back. So we know that managers say what they need to say. Ultimately, Kieran McKenna is an employee of Ipswich Town and will be doing what he thinks is best for Ipswich Town. So I don't want to, like I say, come in too hard on Omari, but it sounded, like I said, when you compare what he said about Broadhead, it sounded for Omari that I think McKenna's maybe just exasperated by the situation, because it feels like he thinks he's making progress with him, and then he goes away and speaks to someone else, and then comes back, and X and Y is agreed between Kieran and McKenna and Omari Hutchinson, and then Omari Hutchinson goes away and his agent or his dad or whoever is in his ear, and all of a sudden that agreement's null and void. And I think we've all been in probably work situations and other situations where this stuff is happening, and it does drive you mad. You think you're getting somewhere, you think you're negotiating something, you think you're moving towards agreeable conclusion, then next thing you know, you're back to square one. And it sounded like, sort of reading between the lines, that's where Kieran McKenna is with Omari Hutchinson. And I say the relationship is a strong relationship between those two. And I say Kieran McKenna is saying that he's a very young player, and he noted that he was a very young player numerous times in his answer there, which I thought Brenner did the interview exceptionally well as well. I thought he really sort of got McKenna to open up about it. And for me, it doesn't feel like the door is shut with Omari Hutchison in Ipswich Town. And I guess, but we don't know that this happened. Ipswich need to say to Omari, look, if somebody offers this much to it, then we'll let you go. And then if they do that, then we are. But his agent can be getting in his ear, but there was a specific price on the table to a specific date, and if he wasn't able to get the deals done, then maybe he should have started this earlier in the summer.
And that's exactly my point, is that it was pretty well known what the release fee was, and towards the end of that time period, it was known when the time period elapsed. And you would have thought, of all the people that would have known that, it was Omari Hutchison's agent. And you would have thought that if he was that desperate to get Omari Hutchison out of Ipswich and back into the Premier League, then he would have let all potential suitors know that these are the terms, this is the deadline, this is the amount, etc., etc. And it would have been done whatever date that was, in June or July, whenever it happened to be, when Brentford placed that last minute deal but didn't tick off the various T's and C's in regards to the payment terms that were in it. Obviously, there's a lot of comments in the chat, varying levels of anger, shall we say? Probably a bit strong, but it is an emotive subject. To Richard's point here, and that's sort of my question earlier, how long can we let Omari play FIFA at home before we say a number hasn't been reached, you're playing here until you aren't? Well, I suppose that will be the 31st of August, will it be, or the 1st of September, where it happens to be in terms of
I do think it's a different matter for the league games, isn't it? I'd say if we take McKenna at his word that he was ill on Friday,
we'll find out, I suppose, won't we?
Yeah.
At 11, or 11:15 on Sunday, whatever it is. To Streaky's point here, the goodwill that Omari had with the fans is evaporating very quickly, if not already gone. I think certainly on social media, it has been. And again, to Rob's point, in Rob's opinion, he's been ill-advised by his agent. It's frustrating, and it is frustrating actually when you see the other players in similar positions, in Fernandez at Southampton and, as he's pointed out, El Kanous at Leicester, both still playing, and there is similar interest. I suppose the one that's maybe more comparable is Dibbling, I suppose, at Southampton, similar sort of age player who's had a sniff of the Premier League and fancies going back, and his head wasn't in the right place, or whatever the phrase that Will still used for the league game last weekend. And yeah, to give you another range on the spectrum. Philip's comment there. And the other end of the spectrum, horse hollerer, trying to have a bit of empathy with Omari. But how can a player who has only 2 seasons under his belt and 5 goal contributions last year hold a club to ransom like this? And Stephen's point here, he may be in the minority, thinks Omari's getting a tough time. He's only reacting to the things he's been told. It's not nice, but if he's told a move is likely, he's probably going to do this. I suppose, but then I'm going to use a rather an awful phrase here, you've either got to shit or get off the pot, haven't you? The club can't do anything if there are no offers in. Certainly, we haven't heard of any offers other than the Brentford one, which didn't trigger the clause. There were rumours that Nottingham Forest are interested, but they seem to be moving on to potentially onto other targets. Until such time as someone slams the money on the table, we're not in any position to do anything other than say to Omari, you know what, if you fancy a game this weekend, there's a match on Sunday at 12 o'clock.
Yeah, and that is it, isn't it? We are, but we'll be working with him as a club, and hopefully we can come to something that's mutually works for everybody, whether that's a sale towards the end of the window or he ends up staying here because he sees the bids aren't coming in at the level we need them to. But ultimately, we're in a strong negotiating position, and yeah, he might want to sit out some games, but there's only 3 more games until the transfer window shuts, and you're not going to sit out a season, are you? Because you haven't got to move.
Yeah.
So yeah. I don't think he's going to sit out 3 more games. I just don't. I think he's, like I say, he's either going to go or come back into the fold and then maybe go after that. But we'll see. But like I say, I'm just mindful that these things there are always narratives at play here. There's always, everyone is working to their own ends in these situations. So, yeah.
Well, I don't know, Paul on the screen here, whether he's getting a percentage. Maybe he's Mr. Omari Hutchison's Mr. 10%. Thinks that Omari's being unfairly criticised. He wants to play in the Premier League, and Ipswich Town are being the greedy ones, trying to squeeze a couple of more million quid out of clubs. But
it might be that we are being greedy. It might be that we have had offers in above that clause, and they are good offers, and we're not accepting them.
Yeah, and then, but to Neil's point here, sort of what I might have been getting at, his agent's messed up and is trying to cover his backside, which may or may not be the case. But I say it just seems strange to my eyes, at least, that if he was doing his, it's your job. If he was doing his job, he'd have got him the move in the middle of the summer.
And like I say, I think we can see how the market works, and that teams have like a plan A, a B, a C, a D, a D1, a D2, and E. They have so many ones that he might be being strung along by ones because we are going to sign you, but
to flash out interest elsewhere.
He might not realise that they are going to sign him if they can't get their A target, who's £10 million less, and they can get from there. So similar to like with Hayden Hackney, I know sort of is seemingly dead at the moment, but maybe revisited. There was a lot of talk like Palace want him, Everton want him, and it's like, well, actually, are they just saying don't sign for anyone yet because we may come in for you? Where and I'm sure we're doing this to players ourselves, we're making them feel special whilst trying to get somebody else who we think is better value than them at some point.
Yeah, absolutely. And again, forgive me, Tom, if I'm pronouncing this incorrectly, saying that his agent would have been in his ear when he signed a contract for another 4 years, which is what he has to honour, doesn't he?
No doubt, big money as well.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, they know what these. I'm assuming he knew what was in the contract when he signed it.
Because also, just quickly, he's a £22 million signing. I don't think £35 million is a massive. It's not a massive profit, is on a player. To buy someone for. If you bought someone for 2.2 million and sold him for 3.5 million, you wouldn't think you've made brilliant money on them. And the sort of percentages are the same. And without taking back Jack Clark, we signed Jack Clark for 15 million. Well, that if we make 10 million on Omari, that doesn't even cover a fee of a player who's struggling to make an impact here at the moment. You want to be the ones that sign a player for 10 million and sell it for 60, don't you? Not that which maybe could have been the case if Liam Delap didn't have a release clause. We might have sold it for 50, bought it for 15 and sold it for 50. But if you want to do this player trader model, you can't be buying players in that sort of 10, 15, 20 million range and making a 10 million profit on them. You need a couple of them to go right up there and have a big 30, 40 million pound profit on those.
Yeah, it's 10 million pound profit minus whatever percentage we need to throw back to Chelsea as their part of the deal as well. So it does need to be worth it from our perspective as well. To George's point here, what he doesn't get is if he wants to move, surely it's in his best interest to get on the pitch and play. But then I suppose by the same token, he might glance across in the injury room across the table to Connor Townsend and think there, but for the grace of God go I, and something untoward happens and that kiboshes that. HCH, welcome HCH, has said, looking at the Cayuste video, it was clear that his agent had been shopping him around. I think it was pretty clear, but slightly different in that it was pretty clear that his parent club didn't want him. So his agent was having to find him a club rather than finding him a club and us being the parent club actually want to keep him. I suppose it's a slightly different scenario, but yeah, in terms of the job that an agent has to do, but the ball is now in the agent's court to get this move sorted, because as I say, things that stand at the moment, the relationship between Omari and the fans is only going one way, unfortunately. We can certainly come back to it if people want to put their comments in. I'll see if I can grab them as we go. However, we don't have a too dissimilar situation. Again, to Neil's point here, it was rare for Kieran McKenna to be quite so open in his post-match interview, and he was open as well in terms of Nathan Broadhead. Poor old Nathan reported in sick yesterday morning, the morning of the game, and to my ears, as I was driving home and using the BBC iSounds app to, or is it the iPlayer? The Sounds app, isn't it? To rewind live radio, I listened to the Brenner interview with Kieran McKenna, as you say, Joe, very good interview. Kieran McKenna seemed to be more, I use the word angry, with the Nathan Broadhead situation than he did, to your words, exasperated with the Omari Hutchinson situation, because when he was talking about Nathan Broadhead and him calling off, he said, which on the day of the game is not ideal. Now, I'm sure it's frustrating and purely coincidental that the two players who've had the most transfer speculation about them in the last 2 or 3 weeks have had illnesses in the last week or so. But I think we're on pretty safe ground here to say that we think that perceived wisdom is that there's a £7.5 million bid on the table from Wrexham, and I think it was thought that it was in all parties' interest to agree and handshake on that once we'd got the relevant substitutions, replacements through the door. But might this suggest otherwise, or is this just a case of Nathan Broadhead's and his team just getting a little bit frustrated with how long it's taking us to sort our end out?
I guess with Broadie, I can understand why he would be peed off, because he was sort of pushed out the door last season, really. I think he was on his way out of the club, sort of in that August window. We signed Sam Spoddick's playing the left, we signed Jack Clark to play on the left, and that left him not really anywhere. And then Jaden Philogene became available in January, so we signed him to play on the left. So we've got effectively 3 very expensive signings that can play in his position. And I think he could probably... some people talk about Jaden Philogene today, and I think it's probably a little bit harsh on him because he hasn't really had a chance to show what he can do yet. And I think he's looked really, really bright in pre-season. But I think if all things were equal, I don't think it would be Nathan Broadhead who'd be the one of those players to leave. But ultimately, Nathan Broadhead is being pushed out the door again because he's got this offer on the table from Wrexham. So we're sort of pushing him out the door, not wanting him anymore, signing players to replace him. And now we've actually sort of said, oh, no, actually, hang on a sec. Omari's thrown his toys out the pram and Jaden Philogene's injured, so we need you to stay. So I could see the sort of messaging of it being quite difficult for him in that regard of We want you to go and find something. Okay, I found something. Oh, no, not yet. Wait a bit. We got to sort something else out. And he knows that move could be, they could run out of patience and decide to move. He might be getting pressure on them to push it through. I agree that McKenna did sound like he sounded exasperated with the Omari situation, where he sounded annoyed, sort of very pointedly annoyed about the Broadhead situation. And I say, if a player calls in sick, there's not really a huge amount you can do. But how many times do we hear a player, they get subbed after about an hour and the manager says, oh yeah, they were being sick this morning and they did well to get through that part of the game? Well, it doesn't seem like. I find it hard to believe that a footballer isn't able to dose themselves up to try and get through some of the game. With what we hear, like I say, I think it happened to Leif Davis last year. He had a tough time one game and McKenna said, oh, he's been sick in the dressing room before the game. I think even Broadhead might have had a game like that before. So it's difficult, but like I say, I could understand if all what I've supposed and the sort of supposition is the case, and Broadie is peed off with the position he's in, because he probably has every right to be, but it didn't help us last night. And I think for him, we want to see him go. And well, we don't want to see him go, but I think he deserves to be allowed to let go and move on. But our transfer business isn't allowing that to happen at the moment.
No, exactly that. And to GVT's point from earlier on, can we afford a Broadhead transfer as things stand? I don't think we can, as things stand. Unfortunately, we haven't heard any rumours about any more potential incomings, other than obviously Akpom's in, but maybe play a little bit more central. Although Kieran McKenna did say, again in a post-match interview, about him being able to play all three of those positions behind, as well as potentially the number 9 slot. So it might be that is one of the wheels that had to get put in motion before we do let Broadhead go. But it just doesn't sit right with me. Again, doesn't the club hold all the cards? I don't understand how we got to a point whereby our players are, not holding us to ransom, probably a bit harsh, but I don't understand how and it's players that have been with us previous seasons and got us promoted and part of the fabric, etc., etc. It just seems a sad state of affairs. To Shabby McNally's point, don't wish to end any player's time at our club on an if you know. I'm kind of tending to agree, but the way things are panning out,
I think that's just football. It's just football now, isn't it? It is a business, and while Sam Morsey was allowed to walk away, that very much is the exception. That is not something that clubs let happen. And I think every footballer, you can speak to guys who've been the most loyal to clubs you could ever imagine, and their exits will shock you how they're sort of let go. And that starts from age 7, 8. I've got friends whose boys are in there at 8 years old, and they just get dumped out of there. Sorry, don't worry. I know you're signed up till the end of the season, but we've seen enough. Go now. This is your last session. See you later. And they go through the system 10, 11, 12, and there's always somebody coming in to try and take their place at every age group. Then they get to 16, they think they've made it, they've signed a big contract, and then 4 boys come over from Norway and Republic of Ireland and Northern Ireland, and they all play in the same position, and you get dumped down. It really is the most brutal, well, not maybe the most brutal, but an absolutely brutal industry from top to bottom of it. And that's sort of why I generally have a little bit of sympathy with players when they're on the other side of it, because no doubt they've seen how badly friends, colleagues, people have been treated over the years, and they know that if the shoe was on the other foot, that's how they'd be being treated. So I can see it on that side as well. But everyone's got, Ipswich got to get the best deal for them. The players got to get the best deal for them, and there will be issues, there will be clashes, there will be disagreements. I say, when you go back to it, when Kieran Dyer left for £6 million back in 1999, and he's like, I think, was it like George Burley and Dave Sheepsense did talk to him for like 2 years after that, because he handed in a transfer request, or his agent spoke to someone, and this is a guy who's come through and was like a world record for a teenager at the time transfer fee, and allowed us to go up the next season by raising that money. It's just there's never a nice way to exit. Like I say, you're probably talking about 1% of players when they leave a club do it on really good terms, and how they want it to happen. So it is really, really difficult. But we're in a position where I think there's just been some mismanagement of the squad, and that's probably where we are now in certain key positions.
Yeah, well, that's gonna be my next point, actually. Just some final ones here, some final thoughts from some people. Trevor saying the sooner we accept an offer for Omari, the better. Horse Hollerer here saying quite a pertinent point, probably, is that if I wish Broadhead wasn't the most informed, fit, and healthy, popular player we have in that left position. There is an argument that of all the players that we've currently got penciled in for that left-hand side, he is the best and most, as has been proven, probably the most suited of the ones we've got there currently to play it. As Paul's point here, must be frustrating for Broadhead. He's a better player in that inside left position than Clark or Smodic. Moving on, Joe, you did mention Sam Morsey earlier. We, devil's advocate mode here, we allowed Liam Delap to speak to clubs at the end of last season while we were still playing games, but it looked like we were down. We allowed Sam Morsey, our captain, to leave for nothing with a year left on his contract, when I'm sure we could have probably done with him at least until the end of August. And the East Anglian Daily Times today, Stu Watson probably went in as hard as he probably could in regards to the muddled thinking of transfers at Ipswich over the last year or two. That signing of Jaden Philogene when we'd already got Jack Clark, but he became available 6 months later, and now having to sell Broadhead, who, for people's notes here in the chat and also to a lot of fans other outside, he is better suited for that system than the two or four mentioned wingers. Can Alex Palmer do what we need him to do as a goalkeeper? Can Ben Johnson, we spoke about earlier, do what we need him to do as a right back? Can Jack Taylor do what we need him to do as a centre midfielder? Can Jack Clark do what we need him to do as a left winger? The hit rate maybe hasn't been spectacular. Is it just been a bit of a strange time in the transfer market for us?
I think the hit rate is generally acceptable when you look at it compared to other clubs. But the problem is when you shop at this part of the market, when you make a mistake, they're expensive mistakes that hang around you for a long time. And I say, you look at the end of the championship season, we had Václav Hladký and Christian Walton both out of contract coming up to the end of the season, both our goalkeepers. Hladký was, I thought he was streets ahead of Walton the way he played out from the back. I'm not saying he would have been a brilliant Premier League goalkeeper, but we end up not agreeing a contract with Hladký and giving Christian Walton a year as an option, going into the next season really without a first choice keeper, which means we have to go early. We signed Aro Muric, who today is signed for Sassuolo on loan. Whilst he's got a lot of good qualities, and I think there's definitely a top goalkeeper in there, it's just how deeply buried in there is that keeper, and is he ever going to see the surface? Because we've seen him have some fantastic games, probably games that no Ipswich keeper has played of that quality for a number of years at the very highest level. But we've also seen him have shocking errors and let goals go through him at big moments. So on that side, and then basically because he sort of shat the bed to such a degree last year, we ended up having on the last day of the transfer, because Christian Walton was injured at the time, we ended up having to rush out and bring in Alex Palmer and give him a 4-year contract. And whilst I think Alex Palmer's a good keeper, is he the right keeper for us? So that whole, and now we're in a position where we've got 5 senior keepers and 2 are out on loan and 3 are there now. So that position has been a muddle where we probably should have just given Václav Hladký a better 2-year contract, 3-year contract, and at least you had that continuity in the squad and got from there. And if you still want to sign Muric, you could have done so, and it not been such a big deal. And then we've got the sort of problem in central midfield where coming up to last season, we had sort of Sam Morsey, who was sort of going to be 34, Massimo Luongo, who barely played in the Premier League, Jens Karius, Calvin Phillips on loan, and then sort of Jack Taylor in there. And the first, like I say, Calvin Phillips and Jens Karius go back, and the first thing we do in central midfield is let Sam Morsey go, who's probably our best midfielder last season. We've brought in Azam Matasiwa, who looks like he'll be a good signing, but it's going to take a while to adapt to it. And you're still in a position where you've got nothing really sorted in central midfield yet. like I say, you've got Jens Kajus back, which I think is a fantastic sign and one that sort of everyone wanted. But it's, I don't know, it's still just very, very up in the air there. And it's a position where, like I say, we're now sort of the middle of August and you've got a huge amount to do in that position still. You could still have 2 more in, 1 more out. And we've obviously chased Hayden Hackney right until the end of the window, or sort of right as far as we could. And that didn't happen. And was there an indication that we should have chased him for that long? I don't know. It's really, really difficult. But you wanted to get him over the line, and we haven't. And now we're maybe scrabbling around from there. And then the left wing situation has become a muddle. But the problem is that Jack Clark was the wrong signing, and just because you've got him, you can't then just try and improve him, because Jaden Philogene was clearly our first choice for that window there. And it's just because we've signed Jack Clark, do you then not try and sign Jaden Philogene? Or do you think actually we still think he's a lot better player? Mate, had Jack Clark hit the ground running and be really good for us in the first half of the season, maybe you don't go out and sign Jaden Philogene when he becomes available. But he hadn't, so we did. But
I think that's my point, Joe, is that why are we signing Jack Clark? There's been a lot of chat in the Telegram group over the last weeks, if not months, about certain players not quite fitting into our system. Well, if they're not fitting into our system, why are they signing for us? Because then how far down the list was Jack Clark? If he was second on our list and he can't play in the system, then I suggest that our scouting isn't up to scratch, because if we're getting the second choice on our list and he can't fit into the system, what was the third, fourth and fifth choice on the list going to be like?
Well, I just don't. I understand they're not fitting into our system, but I don't think that's a valid enough reason for a player not to be able to contribute in. Like this, we're not playing this wacky out there system. We're not asking him to play that Wes Burns role on the right, where you're going to be having long balls pumped at you, and you've got to pretend you're Steve Whitten in his pomp out there, winning headers and playing like that. That's not how we're asking him to play. We're asking him to just play slightly inside with Leif Davis next to him. So. And
but then Ben Johnson being another one then. So Ben Johnson is a right back and he can't play the right back role that we needed him to.
I think that's a fair comment in the Premier League, and maybe we shouldn't have made those signings. But now we've dropped down to this level. You'd think that their quality should allow them to.
Yeah.
If their quality doesn't allow them to contribute at this level, then that's a bigger issue than not fitting into a system, because there's no way. Like Jack Clark was a top Championship player. Ben Johnson's a guy who's played a lot of football in the Premier League and in Europe. If they can't just drop down then and learn a new system, like Sam Smodix played out on the left for us last year. Well, he'd never played out on the left, but I thought he was brilliant when he played. He scored 4 good goals, got into good positions, worked hard, did his doggies coming back, did all his defensive work. Well, if Sam Smodix at 29, who's come through Colchester Academy and played for Peterborough and Bristol City and smaller clubs, can learn how to play this role in the Premier League, then Jack Clark, who's come through at Leeds Academy, playing in the first team early, gone to Tottenham, played for Sunderland, big crowd, big expectations. He's just got to be better, and hopefully he will be. So I just think that if you've made a mistake, sometimes you do need to double down on replacing that as a mistake, and if you think the right player's available. But with Nathan Broadhead, I think Nathan Broadhead is probably a better fit for us at the moment, and it does seem like we're going to need to let him go. But also on the flip side, we signed Nathan Broadhead for $1.5 million when we were a League One side. He's helped us to 2 promotions. I don't think he signed a new contract in this time, so he's probably not earning amazing money. We can get $7.5 million for him. That's really good as a football club, as a trading piece of business. So these things do matter and are important too. But I think it's just a case of. I think it's a couple of comments. It is a bit of a depressing show tonight, and it's a bit gloomy. I'm not really trying to be, and I still have us as favourites for promotion, and I still think we'll be fine. I just think that this month of August is going to be a real horror show for Ipswich fans, because we're going to be losing players we don't want to lose. We're going to have these frustrating transfer deals trying to bring people in that drag on. We're going to turn up to games not knowing who's making themselves available, who is making themselves available. But if we can come out of this, if we get to the end of August with 8 points, then we're probably odds on to get 100 points in the season. But it's just trying to make sure we can get through these games and get the squad a semblance of the squad where we want it to be. It is imbalanced and it isn't where we want it to be. But I'm sure if you spoke to Leicester fans and Southampton fans, they'd probably say the same. That it's just life as a Premiership club. I don't think our squad depth is bad. I think you only.
It's just, as you say,
a couple of key. Yeah, like I say, if you look at like the goalkeeper, we've got two decent goalkeepers. I'm not saying even my favourites at right back. You've got Ben Johnson, Ashley Young. Well, there's probably not many teams with better right backs than that at this level. Left back, Leif Davis will be the best left back in the league. Yeah, Connor Townsend is injured. Shame, big shame. And then Jacob Greaves and Darrow O'Shea at centre back is going to be the best centre half pairing in the league by a distance this year. And then you've got Luke Wolverton and Cedric Keeper as backups. Well, those two could probably be a playoff chasing teams centre half. It's just we know we've got issues in central midfield and they will get sorted. The right side is a problem, but that's a difficult problem because Omari Hutchison is not available at the moment. Wes Burns is on his way back from a long-term injury. Chio Ogbene is on his way back from a long-term injury. Jack Clark played there in pre-season, but because we've had an issue, we've had to move him to the other side. So effectively, you haven't got someone there, but you've got 4 people in the squad capable of playing it. So you can't just go out and sign someone just to do it. So I guess signing someone there is probably dependent on Omari Hutchison leaving, because if he leaves, then we need to do it. So you've got Sam Smodics, Chuba Akpom, Connor Chaplin, who can all play this 10 role well. On the left, you've got Jaden Philogene, Nathan Broadhead, Jack Clark, who all should be very, very good players at this level. And then it's just strikers not quite right at the moment. George Hurst is excellent, and we haven't got the backup to him yet. But I say you sign a 1 or 2 more central midfielders, you sign another striker, and all of a sudden the squad's looking fantastic, and you can just be tweaking that towards the end of the season. Towards the end of the window. But yeah, it is at the moment. It's just going to be a tough grind this month for Ipswich fans.
Yeah. Well, the first 13 days have been a tough one, and the next 18 are as well. Luckily, I'm on holiday for 8 of those, so I can ignore it. Point here from Ipswich Town, old boy, I was going to mention you were comparing Sammy Smodic and his ability to transform himself. He also played for Blackburn while we were sniffing around him.
Yeah, but he wasn't training for them, and in the game he scored. Didn't he? Yeah, but he only came on for like the last 15-20 minutes. So,
but he was there. To come on and score.
Well,
in the last.
So hopefully Omari Hutchison comes on and scores a winner on Sunday.
Don't waste your money at the bookies, people. To Stephen's point here, happens to all relegated clubs. We just haven't been one and been through it, which is a very fair point.
Yeah, and I think that is the key point on it. And I guess for fans, there's also an issue that we've had this band of brothers of guys that have come up through League One to the Championship to the Premier League, maybe didn't get the opportunities that some of them deserved in the Premier League, and now you look through the squad and Harry Clark's injured, Luke Wolverton's a backup, Cameron Burgess is gone, Sam Moores is gone, Massimo Luongo's gone, Wes Burns is injured, Connor Chaplin's bit part, Nathan Broadhead's on his way out. So that team that brought us so many good memories and never let us down is gone. Almost, isn't it? There's only a couple of them left, and probably it's only Leif Davis and George Hurst who are still regulars in that.
Yeah, that's right. Right, we've done that. Let's talk about potential an actual guaranteed outgoing. You spoke about him earlier, Joe. It's been rumoured all summer that Aro Muric was be heading out somewhere onto the continent. Turns out he's heading into the top tier of Italian football with Sassuolo in northern Italy, winners of Serie B last year. Should go in as their first choice goalkeeper this season, and has an option of a €10 million purchase price. Whether Sassuolo will end up paying that 10 million, I don't know. They don't seem to be shy of spending money. I did check just in case he would have ended up being their leading or highest ever transfer fee, but it wouldn't be. He'd be down in 10th, 11th, 12th position. So they've been known to splash the cash. So that may or may not happen. But he's off to Serie A to play his football for the season. Another one that came out later this afternoon, Ali Al-Hamidi, we spoke about him earlier, and it might give an indication of the level he's at with regards to the level of the teams that were after him. It was rumoured that predominantly Luton and Cardiff, and maybe Charlton, although Charlton may not be as in need of a striker at the moment. So maybe he'll pop down to League One, either permanently or on loan. although Phil at TWTD seems to think that Toulouse were favourites still. Toulouse 1 striker, Joe, is unfortunate. Toulouse 2 looks like carelessness. In terms of the weekend, we'll do a little quick one about the weekend, Joe. What are we going to do? Well, obviously, I'll do some plugs in a sec. We don't want to go into this any sort of detail here whatsoever. But yeah, Rob's put here about the players that Southampton have currently got on their bench. Don't seem to be struggling too much with injuries or availability there. And also, they've got a lot of strikers, haven't they? Got about 7 more than we have.
And they've got good quality strikers as well, haven't they? They've probably got 3 of the best 6 strikers in the league. Yeah.
Just lend us one, maybe. As I say, in terms of incomings, there hasn't really been much of a sniff, unfortunately. Okay, we're going to sort of round it up there. We've hit the hour mark. In terms of plugs, we're back into the routine, aren't we? Pre-match show tomorrow night, live at 8 p.m. Rich and Mikey, because Seb's still making his way across the USA. Shaved his legs and he was a she. Flagship on Sunday at 8 p.m. as normal. Subscribers to Top Tier will have access to those shows and additional shows, online blogs, and Friday's preview lead-in show to the weekend from Harry and George, and also an additional Monday analysis show from Adam and Oscar, which will go through Sunday's game against Southampton. So if you are interested in that, please do join us and join the new additions and the extra shows. I said before, there's even a couple of old codgers talking about history, shows from matches from history on the Rewind show. There should be a button somewhere on your YouTube page to click and join us. If we do need to fire the klaxon, Rich will fire the klaxon. It's, as I said, it's looking unlikely that we'll be firing it anytime soon, unfortunately. Blue Monday, itfc.co.uk for all your links, all your bits and pieces like that. Joe, after depressing everyone for the last 1 hour and 2 minutes, do you want to maybe add a little bit of positivity before we head into the weekend?
Well, I'm still waiting for a price back from Sky Bet and Bet365, which I tweeted for a 100 points, 100 goals prediction that I have for us, but they haven't come back. And I still would back that if they can give me the odds on that. So if anyone is good at getting requests to bets, let me know.
Well, to be fair, if the results carry on as they are, mate, the odds are only going in one direction. Brilliant stuff. Well, I say thank you very much, everyone. Thank you very, very much for the chat. I've tried to put as many comments and bits and pieces on as I could. You've been fantastic. Thank you very much for the support. This has been Blue Monday, an Ipswich Town podcast. We will see you next time.